Hello, everybody. People are starting to enter the room, Zoom room here. We'll be getting started in a little bit. I see we have somebody from Hawaii here, so it must be early in the morning for you.
It is, Iris. Nice to see you, it's Max.
Hi. Hello. Looks like we're starting to get people. All right. Well, um, people will probably still be joining as we go, but welcome everybody to our Zoom, our webinar, although it's going to be a very informal webinar, and I want to make people feel comfortable to share their own experiences and questions about navigating the financial management of your S&R. But my name is Ari Kaufman. I am at the Berklee College of Music and the Boston Conservatory as the Associate Registrar, and I am in the middle of my role as Vice President for Finance at AACRAO. And welcome all in one to our webinar on financial management for state and regional associations. And thank you again. And so just an overview about what we will be discussing today is we'll be talking about some best practices to help support state and regional treasurers and other leaders in their roles. We'll be discussing some financial related requirements of a state and regional required, typical responsibilities of the treasurer, and benefits of having a treasurer elect position. Maybe just a show of hands, how many of you have treasurer elects or past treasurers in your association? Actually, I can't. A lot of people are. We got a few. That's great. We'll talk about why that's so helpful. For a lot of reasons. Oops. And then at the end, if we have time, I just wanted to just discuss what my unique roles and responsibilities of the AACRAO BP for Finance, in case any of you are ever interested in checking that role out. It's been very interesting. I was a treasurer for AACRAO for 3 years, and so I remember that experience. And this experience is very different for AACRAO, but the being a treasurer definitely helped me prepare for this other role. So very good. So, and feel free to, if you have questions or anything you want to discuss while we're going through this, to either put something in a chat or raise your hand or any of those things. So, as you know, we all have our full-time jobs beyond working for state and regionals, and we are also we don't look, the S&R boards are not all in the same locations, and that makes some of the logistical things difficult. And we're also oftentimes friends with our colleagues who are on the boards with us in our state and regionals. But sometimes in these roles, we have to be very objective and sometimes ask hard questions and get documentation and all these things. And there's often no instruction manual to tell us how to do all the things we need to do when managing the finances of a state and regional organization. Why isn't my thing? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. And as you all probably know, it's often hard to find people to serve in these roles and to have sort of like a bench. They always talk about having, a bench so that when people roll off the board, you can have folks who are ready to jump in and take their place. One of the challenges of a state and regional also is that the president rotates on every single year. There's a new president. Usually you have like the president-elect president, past president, and they should always be signers on the bank account. And that means that every year, ideally you have to change the signatures on the bank account. And I remember one year we had the bank actually come to our annual meeting, and the guy came from the bank with his papers, and we did the signature change at the annual meeting, which was kind of cool. I don't know how feasible that is on a regular basis, but something to think about if you're able to contact your bank. Maybe the neighborhood banks are a little more willing to do that or not, but it saved us a trip to the bank. Sometimes the bank isn't where. Also, sometimes there's no branch near where the annual meeting is, so it's just a logistical thing too. That can be a challenge sometimes. Because you want the treasurer and the president on there for sure, and if you have a treasurer elect, that'd be another person you could have as a signer on the bank account. Another reality of state and regionals is, for a lot of us, we use what's called cash basis accounting instead of accrual basis, which is how we record activity. And it's not as precise as accrual basis accounting, because it's really based on if you spend the money, if you pay your bill just later, it wouldn't show as an expense in the year you actually had the conference or something. So when you're comparing results from in a cash basis accounting situation, it tells you some information like how's your balance, what is your balance, but it doesn't always tell you. Sometimes it's hard to compare year to year when you use cash basis, because depending on when people send in their dues or their registrations, or when you pay the hotel, it doesn't always match up. So that's something to keep in mind when you have a cash basis accounting system. And if you're interested in doing accrual basis accounting, you would definitely want to bring in an accountant to help you set that up. But usually most of us use cash basis. So these are some things that state and regional should be doing, or must be doing, I should say. Incorporation, insurance, obviously the day-to-day of receiving invoices, paying them, managing the bank accounts, and then preparing a financial report for your annual meeting and having that approved at your annual meeting. And ideally, if you have the bandwidth to do them periodically through the year, to send to the board to take a look at. There's also the annual tax filings that, even if we're not for profits, we still are required to, depending on your status, to file tax forms. Doesn't mean you have to pay tax, but it's like a compliance thing. And then the big one, of course, is membership dues and registrations. And I will talk about member clicks a little later on, which is another webinar that we have in March. It's one there's a huge cry out for member clicks. Everyone, I need help with member clicks. So we're going to have a wonderful member clicks webinar in March, and I'll talk a little bit about more of that later. Great. No questions so far, so I will continue on. Great. Okay. Incorporation. Your AACRAO should be, your state and regional AACRAO should be incorporated as a not-for-profit. And why is that crucial? Because if you're incorporated, then you avoid personal liability, and you also can be tax exempt. And both of those are very appealing, especially the personal liability part, right? Anyone concerned about, like, if if you're at your conference and like a brick falls from the roof of the building, I mean, I would think the hotel's responsible. But if someone slips and falls, I mean, anything could happen, and corporations is important to avoid a personal liability. And then the tax exempt status is helpful because sales taxes can be very high in certain states, and it's just something to think about. And if you're in a regional association, you might want to try to get exempt status in all the states that you're a part of. So, like if you're in New England, for instance, we have 6 states, and I think we're tax exempt in at least a few of them. Also, donations received are tax exempt and lower postage rates. And we'll get to some discussions about these things as soon as you want to. Does anybody have any questions or either that or stories, good stories, horror stories, anything about incorporation? Anyone want to share any experiences of what we've talked about so far? Okay, Tara, hello.
Hey, Ari, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for I'm not the treasurer, but I need to learn about what the treasurer does because we're kind of stumbling over what the treasurer does. Um, and I'm wondering, you're talking about the nonprofit status. Do we have to do that both federally and locally?
My understanding is that federally, it's like I believe if you're federally not for profit, I think that sort of is the only thing you need to do. There's some there, but there are. I remember in Massachusetts, there's like a annual report thing that you're supposed to send out also, which just makes you to be. I think you have to be registered in a state, but the IRS thing, I believe that's federal. Is that sort of what you're trying to?
Yeah, well, because we just recently got a new accountant because the former
Mhm.
accountant was not filing our taxes.
Yeah.
And the new accountant said, oh, you have to fill out these things for Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And because we're regional and I'm in Vermont, I don't live in Massachusetts, we had to like fill out some different forms regarding
Mhm.
like resident agent and everything.
Mhm. Right,
But
because usually the organization is basically incorporated in one specific state. I think is how it works.
right,
But
like it wouldn't move from state to state with the
right,
president. Yeah.
it would stay in one state. But I think as long as you have people on the board of directors who are from that state, I think it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we just filled out a couple of forms for Massachusetts like 2 weeks ago.
Mhm. Right. But the tax exempt is like, I believe that's the federal. And if anyone wants to clarify what I'm saying or correct it, feel free. That's my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great. Also, Jerry, hello.
Hello. I just wanted to confirm that it's nonprofit status with the IRS and tax exempt with the state.
Tax exempt status with the state and not-for-profit status with the IRS.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
so you want to be a 503. We're a 503c6, but I think a lot of regionals are 503c3s, which
Mhm.
are both are tax exempt. And then yes, you file with your state to get nonprofit, and then you file with your state to get tax exempt status.
That's the sales tax exempt. So the sales tax
Right.
exempt is state by state, and the not-for-profit status is the federal. That's
Correct.
right.
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. And so if you have documents about your corporation, you want to keep them in, like, I guess nowadays we can use like Google Drives or other places where we keep in the past years ago it would be like in a notebook in somebody's office, right? Now, thank goodness, with Dropbox and everything else, documents incorporation, it can be maintained in a shared space, and then you can have also information on the web too for like your bylaws and all that. And I mentioned here as an example that there's an annual report that we file in Massachusetts for $15, which keeps our basically a corporation active. And that has to do with like the limited liability thing that I mentioned before. And these are questions if you don't have insurance. These are questions you want to talk about with each other in your organization. Like how much insurance should you carry? Would legal fees be covered? Liquor, other kinds of insurance. I believe New England has had two different kinds. I don't remember what the two were, but there's like all kinds of different kinds of insurance, umbrella policies, people slip and fall kinds of things. But the idea is just to protect yourselves and the association. And then of course with COVID, right? I don't know if insurance covered a lot of these things, but you have to cancel a conference and you have to you could be out a lot of money if you're responsible for minimums and all of that. So insurance can be helpful in those situations too. I think there's something in the chat here. Let's see. It's just Jonica taking some notes. Great. Tina, hello.
Hi. I'll just mention that our insurance was not helpful when we had to cancel our 2020 conference. There's very narrow restrictions in policies about what's considered coverable, and there have to be specific stipulations in place. So I definitely recommend insurance. I'm with AACRAO and we do have insurance, but just don't assume it's going to cover things like that. You'll have to kind of go over your documents and read it carefully.
Yes. I know. I think what we managed to do in New England was that I think they were able to cancel our conference, but we had it at that site again. So
that's what we're doing. Yeah, we same thing. We had to negotiate a thing, but yeah, our original plan was to go to our insurance, but it was like, oh no, that's not going to help. So
well, hopefully we won't have any more canceled conferences due to pandemics, but I guess no one could ever be sure of that. This one's in the chat here. Don Renta says, also make sure there is a force majeure clause in your conference contract. Don, would you want to explain what that is, a force majeure clause?
It's actually new to our group. I'm from Middle States Association, and we were told to put that in because that provides you protection if there is some sort of unforeseen circumstance, like a pandemic or natural disaster or something like that, that couldn't be helped by either party. Great. So that's in all of our contracts going forward. I don't think we had it at the time. So a lesson learned.
Great. And I assume that word majeure is French, so it must mean something.
I think so.
Yeah. Great. So I'm glad that people are contributing because the more the merrier here. Okay, so this has to do with the tax compliance for not-for-profits. And it's basically these are the recommended ranges. So if you have 50,000 or less in gross receipts, the one they recommend you file is the Form 990N. And then if it's between 200 and 500, the easy form. Although I don't know what you would do between 50 and 200. I guess you'd want to do the easy if you're between 50 and 200 also, I think. This is total receipts and total assets less than 500. Okay. And then the Form 990, which is what AACRAO files, because our gross receipts are over 200,000 and total assets greater than 500,000 would be the Form 990. So I imagine most of the state and regionals are either in, there might be some that have 990, but probably mostly in the middle, the easy or the N. If you add up like your membership dues and your conference registrations, probably most of you are probably over the 50,000 is my guess. But Does everybody do this? Do you all do an annual tax form? Great.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments about this process?
This was something that I'm from Indiana, AACRAO. I'm also not the treasurer, but I'm learning about it because our treasurer is new. But we struggled to figure out if we were required to file taxes, and I don't think anybody previously was filing them either. So this is all new to us as well. So this is super helpful to know, but now it's the next step of actually doing it.
Right, like you might not get the IRS knocking on your door saying, "Why haven't you done it?" But it's just good to do it if you are especially if you have if you're incorporated and if you have tax exempt status, and for all the reasons we've already discussed, it's this is important to do. But if you have any questions about any of this, you can always reach out to myself or anyone on this group of friends community that we have here. Yeah. Some things about filing tax returns. You can determine what your fiscal year is, and you can even get what's called an extension. This is what I remember from New England, was that our fiscal year was June 30th, and the tax return is on November 15th, but we always would ask for a 3-month extension, which the IRS is always very, very good about that. So we can compare the tax return, can be prepared. Yeah. Because I think based on the timing sometimes of the annual meeting and other things, the 3-month extension is helpful. And using a CPA or other qualified tax preparer is always a good idea. And how many of you do your own Form 990s? Anyone do your own? Okay. Jerry Becker, do you do it, Jerry?
Yeah, I do the 990 myself. 990
wow.
easy is what we submit.
Okay.
It's not hard.
Okay.
I'm with AACRAO, the Rocky Mountain one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've alternated between the treasurer and the comptroller several times over the years, and we split the comptroller out from the treasurer to do all the accounting, because the accounting scares everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
I do all the accounting. I was an accountant way back in a former life, so I've been doing that for a long time. So tax forms don't scare me.
That's good. Okay. Everyone take a note about Jerry is your go-to person, maybe, if you have questions about the easy 990. Okay. Now let's talk about treasurer elects and past treasurer. Okay, so this is a kind of a very helpful topic. What a lot of state regionals do is they bring in, they elect the treasurer, but the treasurer's not the treasurer right away. They spend a year learning the role. And an important aspect of this whole transition is it's okay to elect the person ahead of time, but you also want to get that person involved as soon as possible. So, like, for instance, the signatures for the bank and access to the accounts and everything. So you want the treasurer, the treasurer elect, to be as engaged as possible as soon as they are confirmed, as opposed to just waiting until the treasurer's term ends, because doesn't really defeats the purpose of having a treasurer elect if you don't get the person involved. And it also, I'll talk a little bit about segregation of duties and things like that. Sometimes it's good to have two people in certain kinds of things, like one person deposits the checks, one person records them, that kind of thing. If you want to have like a very robust, like, internal control system, you can use the treasurer elect for that. There's no rule that says the treasurer elect has to be for 1 year. You can make it longer. You can also have what's called a past treasurer, which means that instead of having a treasurer elect, or in addition to it, when the treasurer leaves, on their way out the door, they stick around for one more year, sort of like the past president does, and is there as a resource. You can have them at one end, both ends, but it's just a really good practice to have somebody in those roles. I think most of the state regionals now have this as part of the procedure. Anyone have any thoughts about treasurer-elect, past treasurer, and if you're using it, and if it's been helpful? Anyone? How many of you do not have a treasurer-elect as part of your organization? Jerry, Tara do not have treasurer-elects. Yeah, I think you could try like adding it to like the slate of officers, and like before the current treasurer leaves, just have elect that treasurer-elect. So it's, instead of it being like a 3-year commitment, it would be like a 4-year commitment. Or you could space it out however you want to, but the idea is you have two people in the role at least for 1 year. Yeah, Dawn. Dawn had.
Sorry, I was just raising my hand because we don't have a treasurer.
Oh, you don't have a treasurer elect. Okay. Do you think it's? Do you think that's something that it would benefit your association?
Yes, we've talked about this a lot because we need continuity, especially for that role. So yes.
Right. I mean, if worse comes to worse and you can't do it, you can always have someone else on your board sort of serve, I guess, serve some of those functions like the secretary or something like that. Like if you wanted to have some internal controls, if you wanted to segregate duties, but the idea of having somebody waiting in the wings when the treasurer's term ends, that you don't have to worry about like signatures on the accounts and those kinds of things. But just something to think about, having that role. Ironically, AACRAO does not have one. It's, although actually that's not true, because when the board gets elected for like 4 or 5 months before I officially took over, I attended like the meetings. So I guess I sort of was a treasurer. Like I just wasn't on any. I wasn't like officially. They don't call us vice presidents elect in AACRAO, but I guess essentially for a few months I was learning from Stan, who was the prior VP of Finance, and that's really helpful. Even if you don't have the treasurer elect situation, documentation and a really good handoff is so important in all the positions, not just the treasurer position, but every position. Either documentation or just a couple hours to spend with your predecessor, making sure your computer works, making sure all the, I mean, now that so much stuff is on the web now, QuickBooks and all that, it's easier to make that transition, but you're making sure that the hardware and everything works. Yeah. Some people have their hands up. Anyone wanted to mention anything? Are these just hands saying that you don't have a treasurer elect?
Yeah,
Curtis and yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mentioned that we split the comptroller, the accounting part, out from the treasurer's position. We used to have a treasurer elect before that, and we could never get anybody to volunteer to be elected as a treasurer. So that's why we split out the accounting function, and we're still having a hard time getting someone to volunteer to be the treasurer. So that's why I'm alternating back and forth. So when nobody volunteers, then I do.
Wait, Jonica.
Yeah, if somebody volunteers, then I won't.
In the chat, Jonica says, "What's the most difficult position on your board to fill?" And for AACRAO, it is the treasurer's role. And do you think that's the case for a lot of folks? It's sort of like you don't get much glory, but it's but you know what's going on, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna.
So try to find.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to chime in and say that we don't formally have a treasurer-elect position for Indiana AACRAO, but what we started doing was kind of like a year of shadowing, because we're having such difficulties finding people that want to do it because there's so much knowledge that's required to do it, and people don't want to assume that risk. So we started having the person shadow our treasurer since our terms are 3 years, which has definitely helped. It's still really hard to find people that want to do it, but it has definitely helped.
Right. I mean, there's like a bookkeeping aspect to the role, and then there's working with the accounting firm, and then there's the whole membership part of it, which the member clicks will hopefully help with that. Tina, hello.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, for PACRO, having the treasurer elect is a fairly new thing. It started, I'm currently president-elect, but I was treasurer, came as treasurer 3 years ago. It started actually during my term as treasurer. I agreed to stay on an extra year for it. But I think that helps with recruiting, is having that elect position, because you can, it's less scary when you can say, hey, you're going to have a year, you're going to learn. And then, you know, you're going to be able to kind of practice this with someone overseeing you. That makes it less intimidating. I also say we have a audit committee for our organization, and minding your audit committee chairs for treasurer is a good idea. That's how they got me, and that's how our current incoming treasurer, who's on this call, Max, that's how we got him. So
Yes, the
it's a
committee is.
trap.
Yeah.
It is a trap. Just kidding. Just kidding. Thanks, Tina.
She got me too.
Well, thank you all for taking the plunge to be treasurers. Great. Okay. These are just some of the daily things you would do if you are new to this role. Just in case you didn't realize, these are all pretty self-explanatory. And the more time you have, obviously, the better you can do with these features, like reconciling the bank statements and documenting the business purpose for every check written. These are the documentation is it's time consuming, but it's very important, especially if you have an audit and you want everything to be above board and everything. Safeguarding your assets, logging credentials, credit cards, checkbook. And these are all just things that a treasurer or the bookkeeper or whoever you have, these are things that every financial organization, every organization should be doing. And these are things that should be done. I mean, we just talked about the audit committee. So that what an audit committee is if you have an independent review from an external accountant of any kind, the audit committee sort of arranges that, and it's ideally. Sometimes the audit committee does the audit themselves, it's just like an internal audit. Or if you have the financial resources to hire someone external, an independent accountant or a CPA, that's even better. And you could do it internally as well if you don't have the resources to do an external independent review. So that means basically your audit committee would essentially ask to see, a sample of invoices that you paid, or a sample of deposits, or different things, just to make sure that things are being documented, or things are being the money you receive is being deposited. It's all for transparency, really, and it's tough. I'll get to this. It's tough when you're like friends with the people who are going to choose your treasurers, but at the same time, you're also liable, and you want to make sure that the money is going where it should be going and not going where it shouldn't be going. And annually is obviously ideal, but if you can't do it annually, at least once during each treasurer's term would be the minimum you should do. Some kind of either, if you can afford it, to have an independent accountant, and if you can't, an audit committee. I don't even know if every state and regional has an audit committee. I don't think so. It's just a good group to have, just so that the treasure, when you have when everything is kept by one person, you just it's just more risk involved. And if you can spread out the risk, whether it's a treasurer elect or an audit committee, just most 99% of our colleagues we can trust to do a good job competently and ethically, but you just want to be sure that you have that covered. Great. Now, if you do decide to use an independent accountant or CPA, you don't have to get like the full-blown financial statement audit, because those can be very expensive and they're very thorough. You can also do what's called agreed upon procedures, which is not like an audited financial statement. It's more about it just gives you a little more comfort, and again, it can be as involved or as minimal as you want, depending on what your board feels comfortable doing. But you can just say, reviewing your internal controls or taking a look at some bank statements and reconciliations, samples of disbursements and receipts. So these are just options to give a little more comfort to the organization, to the board. Agreed upon procedures is what this is called, which is less arduous than a full financial statement audit, but it might be all you really need, based on the size and the complexity of your organization. AACRAO does a full audit because of just the scale of the organization, and we have like a mortgage for our building, and so there's just a lot of reasons why we have a full audit. But I don't know if any state regionals have a full financial statement audit every year. Does anyone do that? Probably, I would think at most you do some kind of audit committee or agreed upon procedures. Let's see, any questions about this? Let's see. AACRAO has an audit committee. Great. So you have a full audit every year, and it's costly. So if it's too costly, you might not need one, depending on the purpose of why you have a full audit. I think it depends on what you can afford and what makes the most sense for the size. But AACRAO seems like it would make sense to do an audit, because AACRAO is, what do they say? California is like the 5th largest country in the world, or was it the 5th? I forget what it was, but you know what I mean. So like the large regionals, it would make sense. But if you're like in I don't know, Kentucky AACRAO, I'm not sure if they would do one or not. But yeah, it's a judgment call. But definitely something. You should do something to, even the smallest state and regionals should do at least agreed upon procedures. And again, it doesn't need to be done every year, but I would say once during a particular treasurer's term. And I mentioned before, asking the tough questions from your treasurer can be interpersonally difficult. Like putting people on the spot at board meetings. So if you want to avoid those difficult conversations, try to get answers ahead of time, and get financials to board members ahead of your meetings, and to avoid those gotcha moments, which can be kind of awkward. So if you do it all, if you sort of do all the stuff, provide financials to your board members ahead of time and get questions back, it's a little smoother that way. And these are some things that should be done, right? Follow up with uncollected invoices. This is some of the stuff that the treasurer, it's sort of the headache stuff. Following up with attendees that never sent in their checks for their conference, for the membership, and reimburse people, pay invoices in a timely manner, renewal letters. These are like the things that should be done if you have the time, and ideally these are important things to do. And anyone? It says Max created some great guidelines with the AACRAO Audit Committee. Excellent, thank you. Great. Any thoughts about these kinds of things that the treasurer does? Tina, yes.
Just a norming question. How many organizations have moved mostly to credit card versus check processing?
maybe raise your hand if you use credit cards for your organization. Looks like Curtis Clock and one other, Jonica. So not everybody. So still, a lot of organizations still use checks to pay a lot of their invoices.
Well, and also to accept payments from people.
Oh, you're talking about for membership dues and that kind
Yeah,
of
for
thing?
membership dues and conference attendance.
Yes. That's how many folks require check payments for your conference dues and or to use PayPal or that kind of thing? Anyone want to chime in on how they do membership dues and conference registration? Let's see.
Looks like a lot of people are saying they accept both.
Mhm.
I think PACRO, we accept both for membership, although we really, really, really prefer the credit cards. But for conference, I think we set it up the last several conferences that you can't do it by check anymore unless you contact us specifically. I just wondered what else other people are doing. Of course, we have Canadian members as well, and Canadian checks are a nightmare.
Okay.
No shade to our friends to the north, but
Yeah, I think New England does for the conference. I think it's mostly credit card, I believe. But member clicks, I don't know a lot about how that works, and I look forward to the March member clicks training. But I think we're still in flux as in our organizations. I know credit cards are really a lot of the activities happening now that way. Let's see. Don Renta, some of our members cannot use credit cards at their institutions, so we accept both. Very good. Okay. So let me go back to my slide here. I mentioned this already about the segregation of duties. I started talking about that. So ideally, and you might not have the bandwidth to do this, and if you want to be the most best internal control, is the person who receives the cash should not be the person recording the transaction. A little tricky with systems that we use, and then access to the bank statement should be available to more than one person. That's a good one. And then if you're writing a very large check for the hotel that you're using for the conference, 2 signatures, that'd be a good idea. Making sure you don't have the same invoice paid twice. Maintaining minutes, backup copies of accounting files, which I think that was more when it was on like hard drives and stuff. Now that do all of you use accounting software now that's on the cloud? So that's much better. Yes. Okay. Any comments about some of these segregations of duties things? Do these things make sense to break these things out if possible? Or it might be overkill in some situations, but these are just sort of best practices in the accounting world. Any comments? Okay. Whoever thought talking about accounting stuff can be so much fun, right? I mean, here we are. Budgeting. Okay. Just full disclosure, we didn't do a budget when I was at AACRAO. It takes, it's a whole other step, but it's a very healthy thing to do. It has lots of value to it. Just so that you can sort of prepare what's happening in the upcoming year, and so you can also, you can compare to what you're doing last year, but to have like a budget, like a monthly budget, to see where you're heading, if you're going in the right direction, if your membership dues are being collected the way you expect. It's a good idea to do it. Anyone how many of you do budgeting for your state and regionals? Do you anybody? Yes, Tina does. Great. Again, this is probably another one where the larger your organization, the more bandwidth you have to do these kinds of things, and the more important it is to do, because there's so much at stake. Another thing, and there's something in the trash here. Oh, Lisa Emery, we have the president as the second signer review of all checks. Great. And we approve a budget every year. It's also good to, for AACRAO, we had, in the past, we had to approve the budget way, way ahead of the beginning of the next fiscal year. And we recently changed how we did our budgeting so that we don't need to plan so far in advance. So the budget, it's important to have the budget be relevant, and the closer you can develop the budget to the beginning of the next fiscal year, the better, because then you're close to the actual time period, so you can make it as accurate as possible. And some things you can't budget for. You can't budget for COVID because you don't know COVID's going to happen ahead of time unless you have talents in predicting things. What else? Okay, so these are some timely topics here. Every so often I'll get an email from who I think is, who it looks like is the president of AACRAO, asking me to wire some money or something, but it's not really her, it's an impersonator. And I think one of our state and regionals was caught in a phishing issue. But anyone who's a president or treasurer or anyone on the board, watch out for these suspicious emails that come to you before you write a check to somebody. I mean, most of the time you can tell it's strange. It doesn't seem like a typical kind of request, but this is a very risky situation here, and they're getting more sophisticated in the way they send these emails. They put like very official looking letterhead and font of Amazon or whatever. So just I guess double check before you pay anybody. Anyone want to share any stories about phishing? AACRAO gets a lot of these. Okay. Yes. Did you want to comment, Tina?
This is going to sound really silly, but we started nicknaming ourselves as treasurers. And part of the way that you can easily tell is if it came to me and from our president and it said Tina Miller instead of Hey Moneybags. That was how I knew it was a scam right away. And we just kind of kept doing that. We've got Cash Money Coup, and then we're still trying to figure out what Max is gonna.
That's great.
Maximilian. I mean,
We've determined Maximilian.
Maximilian. Yeah,
Maximilian.
It's dorky, but it works.
So you're Moneybags? That's great.
I was Moneybags during my term as treasurer. Wow. Yeah, and then we currently have Cash Money Coup, and then we've got Maximilian coming up the pipe. So
that's something I did not expect to learn, but that's a great one. That's a great takeaway. And this webinar is being recorded for posterity, so we'll all know. That's classic. I love that. Anyone else have other experiences or phishing expeditions that they regret experiencing? Jonica.
I do. As president, probably 2, maybe 3 years ago, there was conversations that weren't happening, and we were meeting every 2 weeks. So it was very interesting that there was money going out from my treasurer because of a phishing incident. And it was 3 different occasions that totaled almost $4,000 before she actually said something to me about feeling uncomfortable sending any more money. And she emailed me and she said, Jonica, I feel very uncomfortable sending any more money. Like, we haven't talked about this. This hasn't been on any of our agendas. Like, who are we paying? And when she forwarded the emails, it was from like AACRAO President 1 at Gmail. But how it comes up in Gmail is it just looks like AACRAO President. And I was like, we've never emailed. We don't have, we email from our school emails when we email. So it was a lot of checks and balances around that conversation. I wish we had some money bags and some nicknames to kind of say that wasn't, but even the tone of it. She was like, I just felt like you were very aggressively like telling me to do something and I was behind and I was delayed. And I was like, but I never speak to you like that. And we've been together for 2 years. So we were together for 2 years in different capacities, her always being treasurer before this even came about. So it was very interesting how the tone really drove her to make some decisions and then to have a conversation almost after 2 meetings where we've all had committee conversations and this was never broached.
Was the email like, please send me money?
It was, I'm headed to a meeting very quickly. I need you to do this because we need to solidify this right now. And I was like, but I always ask, like, there's anytime we even, as a matter of fact, I don't even ask to pay. The payment never comes to me. I'm not even the VP of programming. So why am I asking you to pay for something? So yeah.
And was it to pay to the order of you yourself or
It
the
was no,
they said
I
like
need you to wire this money to this person, and it was like through Zelle, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was
The word
a
wire is a dangerous word when you wire.
And I said again, like we always receive an invoice, like you're the treasurer. We have, this isn't new. We didn't, why would you skip a step for me? Well, why would you, an idea of a president? So it was just very interesting. When we went to annual leadership meeting in June, Melanie was talking to us and she was just like, yeah, three individuals taking, and we hadn't even shared anything with anybody. We filed a police report and we did all of that and we got the account, shut down. We did those things, but we didn't say anything to AACRAO. And just a couple of months later, it was like, oh yeah, this is happening. We were like, dang it, I wish a wired email came out saying, beware, be careful.
Very good. Oh, Don Renta.
I got a similar email. I'm president now. I was president-elect last year. And I got an email from who I thought was our president. And he said, our treasurer, Sue, and they used her name, Sue, specifically, saying she wasn't available. Could I send something through Zelle? And for a half second, I was like, oh. And then I'm like, why would he be asking me to do that? So I looked at the return address and it was a bogus Gmail. But her name on our website says Susan Hamilton, and they knew it was Sue. So it's freaky how good these emails are getting.
Is Zelle like a well-known way to wire money? I'm not familiar with.
It's like it's through your bank. It's like PayPal or Venmo. It's similar to those.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean,
but be careful.
Be careful, I guess. I mean, I don't know if there's a safe. I love the nickname thing because that I like that a lot. Yeah, great. Okay, now let's talk about member clicks. Okay, and this is really in preparation for the next webinar on March 13th. So it's an all-encompassing membership software and website package built to make small association management manageable, and this solution is available to all AACRAO state and regional associations at reduced rates in partnership with AACRAO. I'm not aware of what the actual rate is. I don't know if anyone knows, but it's worthwhile, and hopefully this session on March 13th, it's going to be presented by Casey Wallace, who is the treasurer-elect, I believe, of Kansas AACRAO. She's going to be she's used member clicks and she's very comfortable with it. And she's going to be leading a session on how to make the most of member clicks, make sense of it. I know some people have lots of pain points with it right now. I forget what the pain points are, but anyone want to share their current concerns with member clicks? Yes, Curtis.
Yeah, we our discussions have gone to the point where we're like, should we be looking at other software? Because it has been such a pain point in terms of we've inherited what was there from when it was implemented by another exec board, and we don't fully understand how everything was set up. And obviously, it's just difficult to wade through that. And at the point it would take for us to kind of undo all of the work that they've done, it almost feels like we would benefit from having a system that's less clunky and more intuitive. A lot of the stuff that we've found with member clicks is just, it's not intuitive at all. You really have to know what you're doing in order to get things to work. So we've struggled with it quite a bit.
That's good to know. Thank you. Tara.
We're similar to Curtis. Everything he just mentioned, we've had the same issues. Like our membership database is really dirty. There's just a bunch of data in there that should have been cleaned up a while ago, and nobody's taken the initiative to do that. And we've struggled with their customer service. I think at one point, Andrew was on the phone for like over an hour with them, just trying to talk to somebody, to the point where they've just directed everybody to a chat bot now. It's been really difficult. But we recently moved under the AACRAO umbrella for the membership and member clicks. So I think, right, it's a discounted rate for sure, and it's being subsidized by AACRAO. So it's something the AACRAO won't have to cover anymore because we're under AACRAO's account. And it's the same package that we had too. So I think member clicks did reach out to us and say, okay, by doing this, we could offer you one of these consulting packages, because we're going to be entitled to like a small refund. So they offered us either, you know, this nominal refund or like an hour of consulting.
I'm wondering if it makes sense to collect some of these pain points ahead of Casey's presentation, so that she has some knowledge ahead of time what people are struggling with regards to member clicks. I don't know if Amber or Jonica would be available to collect, or from folks who are here today, the pain points that, or just some things that to let Casey know about, maybe, so that like the things that are the most painful. Because if she spends, I don't want her to spend the entire training on things that are the easy stuff. I want her to, I would hope that she would spend time on the things that people are struggling with, and to make it as good as possible. Does that sound like a good plan for people? Yeah. So great. Jonica is taking notes, and we'll follow up with Amber and Casey, and maybe all the people, anyone who wants to share. Well, we have the recording. We'll have the recording of this Zoom, so we can go back and discuss. Anyone want to share any other concerns with member clicks for the record before we go to the next part? I think we're almost at time anyway. So let's see what else is here. We will also be having a webinar in April with member clicks. Okay, with the vendor. Great. So we have Casey in March, and then member clicks themselves in April. So that's a double shot of member clicks. How about that? Okay. The last thing I have here, actually, before we go, this slide's just a synopsis. This is a synopsis of what Casey is going to be talking about. All the tools to join us to discuss best practices for reporting, reconciliation, budgeting, member clicks to support fundraising, membership growth, and fiscal oversight. Yes. Jerry Becker, the member clicks is still fresh in your mind. Okay. So hopefully, Jerry, you'll be available to attend that member click, so you can share your knowledge. Great. Just the last thing I wanted to quickly just discuss or go over is what the role I have is, how it's a little different than the treasurer role. So what I benefit from is the AACRAO has a full accounting staff of its own. We have a CFO, we have accountants. So a lot of the things that you all struggle with, having to prepare tax returns or prepare bookkeeping and financial statements. In my role, I don't have to prepare them, but I do review them and share them with the board of directors. Some things that are potentially unique to the AACRAO role is to manage a whole process if we had to get a new internal accounting company or an external auditor, we have a very robust RFP process that we go through every time we need a new vendor for something. So that's a unique to the AACRAO role. We have a large investment strategy and a policy that we work to develop, that we're in the process of. Where do we put our extra money, and how much of it do we use for strategic projects versus how much do we want to keep in the bank, reserves, all those things. I chair what's called the Finance, Investments, and Audit Committee, which we talk about the audit and then our investment strategy and looking at financial statements, the property that we manage, and I present every year at the AACRAO annual meeting our budget and our financial results. And it's an interesting role. And if any of you have any questions about it, if you want to, after you're done with your role in state and regional, if you're interested, let me know. But definitely being a state and regional treasurer definitely helped me a lot in this role. And I wanted to make sure that when I was in this role that I would keep that connection between the VP of Finance for AACRAO and all the state and regional treasurers. I think that's very important for us. We're all in the same world, I guess, and it's good to share our pain points and our successes. And I look forward to this conversation continuing. And any closing questions or thoughts from anybody? I wanted to
thank you for doing this.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to, and I hope that you all got to meet other treasurers today, and we're all a resource for each other. And I look forward to continuing the conversations. Thank you all so much, and thanks, Jonica. Thanks, Amber. Thanks. Goodness, I forgot the name of the other person.
Belma.
Belma, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Belma. See, you're so behind the scenes, I forgot you. That's what happens when you get a little older. Sometimes you forget things, but thank you, Belma. Great. Well,
this was awesome, Ari. Thank you so much. And everyone, we will be sending out a survey. Please give us your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you next month. I was reminded February 7th is our webinar is at 3 p.m. Eastern. So you'll notice that when you go to register. So I apologize for that note, but have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you for the great conversation, everybody. Take care. Okay. Bye-bye.